Excellent. The higher power is now on your side. Poštovani svi, dobrodošli na prvo od dva svečana otvaranja 8. Beogradske NATO nedelje, koju smo ove godine nazvali Ovo smo mi. Centar za evroatlantske studije od početka realizacije ovog projekta ima podršku NATO odeljenja za javnu diplomatiju za ove naše događaje, a od nedavno i podršku Sjedinjenih Američkih Država, a ove godine najveću podršku su nam pružili upravo nova point ambasada NATO u Srbiji, Kraljevina Holandije. Izuzetno imamo dobar listu učesnika. Sutra će nam se obratiti i ministar spoljnih poslova Republike Srbije, gospodin Ivica.
Tomorrow, the Prime Minister will address us, new Speaker for the Parliament, Deputy Speaker for the Parliament, the representatives of other diplomacy department, operations department, and we are very happy that we have the key panel ahead of us, bearing in mind the situation that is taking place. And we will have an opportunity to hear the Calarisi, Victor Commander, as well as Chief of Staff. We'll have excellent opportunity to discuss the relations between EU and NATO, and a panel on the relations between Serbia and the United States. We'll have an opportunity to be addressed by the Mr. Beanovic. But today we will start our official NATO week with the excellent speaker. I'm especially glad to be able to introduce Vladimir Bilčik, who is the EU Parliament Standing Rapporteur for Serbia and the chair for delegation to the Montenegro Stabilization Association Parliamentary Committee. When you are heading a think tank in Serbia that promotes NATO membership of Serbia, in spite of the fact that you're entitled to be the Center for Euro-Atlantic Studies, you're usually considered to be first and foremost someone who's promoting relations between Serbia and the United States. But we also focus on relations with EU and Euro-Atlantic integrations in general, that includes EU membership of Serbia. We are in military neutral country. However, we understand the importance of the military cooperation between Serbia, EU, and NATO, and we always tried to include the speakers from the institutions of the European Union, and we are especially glad that we have Mr. Bilčik here with us today. We do not need to introduce him further. He is very well known here in Serbia with a lot of credibility. He has an expert in military and political issues. And before I give the floor to our special guest tonight, I will give a couple of words to Mr. Bojan Klačar from SESID and Mr. Nemanja Starović, historian and political expert, to present to us briefly the findings of the latest public opinion survey that SERBIA has conducted especially for this conference, and research on how certain topics have been covered during the election campaign. And this is in order for Mr. Bilčik to be better acquainted with the current situation and for all of us to get an overview of the general public opinion attitude. Hello, I hope that we can hear each other. I have a slight boom in my ears, so this is why I'm asking. Hello. On my part, I would like to thank Elena for inviting me. Thank you for allowing me and our organization to give our contribution to this conference. So we have conducted a public opinion survey at the end of June. That is now almost becoming a traditional, because we always carry similar surveys at that time of year. So I will share with you some of the findings. If the organizer enables me to do so. If it's impossible to see the presentation, I will try to tell you a couple of words without presentation in front of me. Thank you, Bojan. Mr. Bilčik, can you hear Bojan?
Yeah. Thank
you, Bojan. You can share.
Kao neko ko je gost. Treba mi dozvola, treba da mi neko ko je organizovao sastanak da dozvolu da to uradim. Sad je imam, hvala.
Okay, you can proceed.
Samo trenutak.
Just a moment, please. If I can just say a couple of words. Okay. I will try to briefly present this together with Jelena. I have some technical issues. Just a second, please.
Jako je važno da govorimo o tom periodu zbog toga što je to period koji se jednim manjim delom poklopio naravno sa izborima, a potom se dakle preklopio sa onom najavom koja je veoma brzo usledila kada je reč o nastavku kosovskog dijaloga, dakle govorimo o toj nedelji. Uzorak je bio 1000 ispitanika koji su stariji od 18 godina. Urađen je naravno telefonski, nemoguće je bilo u ovakvoj situaciji raditi face-to-face istraživanja i na osnovu
uključi mikrofon, kad ima mikrofon uključen je uključen.
Napravljen je upitnik od 20 sociodemografije i ono što je jako važna informacija za sve učesnike danas. Ovo je treće istraživanje. Od 2018. godine ih redovno radimo, a radimo ih manje više po istoj metodologiji, radimo ih na istim uzorcima i istom tehnikom i svi ovi nalazi su veoma uporedivi. Mi smo krenuli sa jednim bilo povezano sa COVID-19 i zapravo smo želeli da znamo, ja sam zbog gostiju pustio englesku verziju prezentacije, nadam se da to neće smetiti, lakše je možda da svi pratimo. Prosto želeli smo jednim pitanjem da vidimo da li ljudi u Srbiji misle da Srbija treba institucionalno i regionalno da bude povezana sa ciljem omogućavanja medicinske opreme i ostalih, dakle, supplies i nama je tu bio cilj da vidimo da li ljudi veruju da Srbija treba da bude povezana i da li možemo da dobijemo neku vrstu iznenađujućeg odgovora. Odgovore koje smo dobili su očekivani, imajući u vidu razmere krize. Većina ljudi je rekla, njih 64%, da Srbija treba da bude povezana sa svim zemljama. To je očekivano. Procena ljudi je da je kriza toliko velika da treba iskoristiti pomoć masa koje strane ta pomoć dolazila. 16% ljudi smatra da ta pomoć treba da bude povezana, odnosno dobijena u saradnji sa Kinom i sa Rusijom, a po 7% veruje da Srbija...
But 7% believes that Serbia on its own or in cooperation with other countries of the region should operate in order to ensure emergency preparedness. So it's clear that Serbia, people believe that links should be established between the countries in order to ensure all the contingencies. One of the key topics of our survey was relations between Serbia and EU and whether Serbian citizens believe in EU accession and EU membership of Serbia. We have conducted similar surveys in the past 3 years. So we see that there are just slight differences in the public approval of Serbia membership in EU. We see that those in favor of Serbia's accession to the EU are ranked at 49%, so this is quite stable. And we can see that it's slightly growing in comparison to 2018 to 2020. We see that there is about 31% of those who are against Serbia's succession to the EU. There is a drop in number of those who are against Serbia's membership. We see that there is a strong drop in comparison with especially 2019. There is also approximately 18% of those who would not vote in the referendum. So we see that there is a strong support for EU succession, Serbia's EU accession. So there is practically no differences in comparison with those who would be in favor of joining NATO, where the referendum to be held this week. We see that in comparison with the previous year, there is a slight drop of those against Serbia's joining NATO. So we are currently at 72% of those against. In favor of Serbia joining NATO is 9%. However, there is a number of those who would not vote slightly growing. We shall see what the trends are going to be like in the future. Where we see the only deviation is in Belgrade. We see that there are more those in favor of Serbia joining NATO living in Belgrade, so in the urban areas. Also, those who have either elementary or high school education are generally those who are against membership in NATO, where those with university education and higher are generally in favor. Now, for those respondents who would vote in favor of Serbia's joining NATO, the response is generally that it is due for security reasons. So as a researcher, I can say that this is quite a good response. We see that it is quite clear that general citizens believe that in order to have the better security, we should join NATO. There are, of course, quite a large percent of people that also believe that all others have joined, so we should as well. But we see that there's a rise in the number of those who are in favor of NATO or joining NATO for security reasons. For those respondents who voted against Serbia, the reasons for being against Serbia joining NATO is vast majority NATO bombardment.
Što možemo mimo toga istaći jeste zapravo taj jedan opšti razlog, a to je dakle da su ljudi rekli da nam oni nisu prijatelji, misle na članice NATO saveza. Zaboravio sam reći, ovde govorimo o
that we are talking about open issues.
I upisivali njihove odgovore. Zbog toga su zapravo i ovakve formulacije da ne biste bili zbunjeni.
So most of the responses are generally of general nature, so we can see that there's no benefit for Serbia due to neutrality and others. We also try to see how the findings vary depending on the fact of bombing of Yugoslavia or Serbia. So if NATO had not taken the part in bombing of Serbia, would they vote in favor of Serbia joining NATO today? We see that there is a number of those who would be in favor of joining NATO, even in that case, practically half. 30% would be in favor of joining NATO in that case. Now, this is an issue that we have been tackling for the third time in this third annual public opinion survey.
Koliko je znanje ljudi o nekim ključnim procesima kada je reč priključenja NATO. Ja moram da priznam da ovo istraživanje vidjet ćete...
This is why we have decided to also ask questions about the general knowledge of the citizens, or rather, to what extent do they know about the members of EU and their relations with NATO, or rather, how many EU member states are also NATO members. We see that there is a number of those who responded, and nearly all EU member states are also NATO members. Fewer than one half of EU member states are also NATO members, who dropped to 12. But what should be an issue of concern that a lot of people actually do not know the answer, almost 1/4, 24%.
Da li ljudi misle da je postojao neki...
People believe that there was an objective reason for NATO to bomb Serbia?
Zamolili smo ih da nam kažu koji je to razlog.
We asked them to give us the reason. You see that the majority of people have no dilemmas, and that they are absolutely certain that we were bombed for no reason whatsoever.
Nikakvog razloga. Dakle, vidite ovaj narandžasti deo ove pitice.
So this is the orange-colored piece of the graph.
Mimo ova dva odgovora, koji su navodili
we have about
neke razloge i jedino što možemo izdvojiti
certain number of people who gave us other reasons, but the only aspect that we can say had a large number of proponents was that Slobodan Milošević did not want to resign as president, or the wrong policies of Slobodan Milošević. We see that 75 to 76% of the citizens believe that we were bombed for no reason. Another question that we also had in the previous public opinion surveys related to what extent do people know how long did it take after the World War II for the opposing sides of the conflict to come to an agreement or to come together in NATO? We see that 66% said that more than 10 years have passed, which is the wrong answer. Again, 25% did not know the response to this question. And only 9% knew that the time passed was between 5 to 10 years. What is the opinion of Serbian citizens when it comes to the relationship with NATO in terms of improving emergency response and crisis management?
Za koje mi u ovom momentu ne možemo da pronađemo adekvatno objašnjenje. Dakle, mi smo dobili da 33% ljudi u Srbiji vidi negativno na saradnju.
The response was that 33% of the citizens perceived this cooperation in negative terms. Only 15 observe it in positive terms, while 44 are neutral. Now, we cannot discern why there is such a huge discrepancy. Maybe this was due to the moment in which the survey has taken place. It was, of course, the time of the COVID crisis. But we see that the relatively small percentage of people are in favor of Serbia's cooperation with NATO. This is another question that we also raised in previous surveys, that if a referendum were to be held this week regarding the petition of Kosovo, but we also questioned as to if this was supported by the United States but opposed by the EU, would citizens be in favor of it or not?
Šta se ovde desilo? Desilo se zapravo da smo dobili jedno povećanje ljudi koji se protive ovom rešenju.
We see that there is a raise in the number who are against the petition and drop in the number of those who are in favor.
Vi vidite zapravo da je procenat onih koji su za i koji su protiv bio manje više identičan. Danas je taj procenat...
Previous years, those who were in favor and against were more or less identical. Now we see that there are more people against petition than last year and the year before.
Neodlučni ili koji nisu imali nikakav stav o ovom pitanju. Kako je mišljenje ljudi u Srbiji o rezoluciji Ujedinjenih nacija, Saveta bezbednosti Ujedinjenih nacija 1244?
Regarding the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1244, and whether it goes in favor of Serbia or against it. 52 believe it's favorable to a certain extent, but not completely so. So practically half believe it's favorable up to a point. Only 23 believe it's favorable. 10%. So 15% does not know or cannot tell. Another graph we'll see later that shows the lack of understanding of general citizens regarding the victims of NATO bombing, and especially those fatal casualties among the Serbian civilians. The orange color represents Serbian civilians, while the gray is the number of victims among the Kosovo civilians. First conclusion we can draw is that people in Serbia really do not know the exact number of fatal casualties. They actually have no idea as to what was the exact number. We see the 53% does not know, neither for the Serbian or Kosovo civilians. The other conclusion is that people in Serbia generally believe that the number of Kosovo victims were much lower than Serbian. We see that 23% of Serbian citizens believe that much higher number of fatal casualties were of Serb ethnicity and much lower of Kosovo ethnicity. So obviously further research should be done there. Thank you, Boyan. We should continue with the presentation to more detail, and we'll introduce the results of another public opinion survey conducted together with the Kingdom of the Netherlands, together with students of the Faculty for Political Organization Studies. And this presentation will be given to all our speakers and all those interested. Another reason why we entitled this conference, This Is Us, is we wanted to show that there is increased dynamic of relations between Serbia and the United States and extended cooperation with EU and Serbia. So there are many different projects at play. Our conference, or this first panel, is entitled Everything You Know About Me, which was the title of a famous ballad by Arsen Dedic, because it goes, everything you know about me is so very little. So with this, today, many those who are experts in this topic, and now we also have Vladimir Bilčik, who comes to us from one of the most important institutions. This is Parliamentary Committee for Serbia. Please welcome to our conference.
Thank you very much, and a very good evening to everyone in Belgrade. It's very good to connect, and I want to thank the organizers, the Center for Euro-Atlantic Studies, for the kind invitation. Also, big thanks to Bojan for the presentation of the survey data. It's very good to be here. I know it's the midst of the summer, but summer is very political these days in Europe because of the COVID-19 situation. And we just had a marathon summit in Brussels, which ended early this morning with an agreement on a big financial package for Europe's recovery. And I think this is also good news, not just for the member states and for the European Union. Of course, we in the European Parliament will have an extraordinary session later this week to discuss this deal. And I know we have a lot of questions in the European Parliament. Overall, I think it's a good news that we have a deal. We should discuss what sort of a deal we have, but it's also good news for the Western Balkans and for Serbia. We need a stronger, more resilient Europe, and we need Europe which is going to be more able to engage in the neighborhood and engage seriously and consequently with especially the closest neighbors, those who are engaged in negotiations on their European perspective, and that includes Serbia as well. So it's important to connect now this summer, although I regret not to be able to be in Belgrade. This is quite frustrating, I must say. As the rapporteur, the standing rapporteur for Serbia, the last time I visited Belgrade was in early February together with Commissioner Varhelyi, and it's frustrating to be able to connect online, and I have been doing this very regularly. I'm able to see Serbia's representatives in Brussels, but of course it will be some time before I can come back to Serbia, and I hope this gives us an opportunity to discuss some of the important issues at the moment. So glad to be here, and I understand this is going to be more of a Q&A and interactive session, so I'm keen to hear your questions because I haven't really prepared a speech. I'm happy to talk about all issues and the survey and Serbia, but let's make this as interactive as we can.
Ja bih vas odmah sada pitala da li ste u ovim rezultatima koje smo vam poslali, da li ima nekih iznenađujućih nalaza, korisnih nalaza, i odmah drugo pitanje, s obzirom da ste i predsjedavajući odbora za proces stabilizacije.
You are also a member of the delegation of the Montenegro Stabilization Association Parliamentary Committee. We heard the disappointing news that discussions held between the representatives of the church and the government did not go so well. Are you observing this process, and can you assist it or better explain it to the general public both in Serbia and Montenegro?
Thank you very much. I didn't quite get all the interpretation, ali samo malo razumim. So I'll try to answer. I know there's a question about the relations between Serbia and Montenegro and the church issue. And I guess you asked me also to comment a bit on the data and the findings of the survey, if I caught it completely. Now, let me start with the first issue. maybe let me make two quick observations on the survey. First, I think I'm intrigued by the data which talk about the overall support for European Union membership in Serbia. I think it's good that there is a solid support and there is a solid figure of over 50% of people who would vote in a referendum in favor of Serbia's membership in the European Union. That's good news. But I also am convinced that that number could and should be higher. We've seen this across the candidate countries in the past, that the overall public support for European Union membership has been higher than 50%, much higher than 50%. And this is something which has in many cases been maintained over time. And this is important. The European Union is keen to engage on enlargement. At the moment, we've done a lot of work in the past year to forge consensus across the institutions, across the EU member states, in terms of how we can move ahead with enlargement. There is a clear strategic goal to have at least one country ready for European Union accession by 2024 when we finish this institutional cycle in the EU institutions. And I very much cross my fingers that we can have more than one country ready. I'd be happy to have as many as possible. But this will entail a lot of hard work on reforms, on delivery of action, on acceleration of the accession negotiations. And I also believe this will entail a lot of hard work and active political work on the ground by the political elite in Serbia as well, with the public. This is something which we need to see. Convincing work with the public, that the public really cannot hesitate about EU membership, because this is not just about pleasing the rest of the EU. This is mostly about Serbia's future, European future, which has brought huge benefits, by the way. EU membership has brought huge benefits to all those countries that have exceeded in the past 20 years. I can just cite the example of my own country, Slovakia, which has changed fundamentally from the 1990s to where we are today, in terms of how well off we are economically, how well integrated we are politically, and also what role we play and manage to play, and some of our people in European politics. I'm very pleased to be active in the Balkans as the standing rapporteur for Serbia, as the chair of the delegation of Montenegro. Miroslav Lajčák, another Slovak diplomat, is now engaged in facilitating the talks between Pristina and Belgrade, crucial political dialogue. And so it just shows that small countries can be very successful as EU member states. So this is about really taking up the opportunity. And here I would like to say the numbers are good, but I think there is a lot more work in terms of public communication that can be done and should be done on the ground. This also entails our ability, EU politicians, to communicate clearly the benefits of EU membership. But I think the key task is really for the elite in Serbia. The ownership of the EU agenda must be something which will come natural to the public and the political elite. And so I think it's a good solid base, but more work needs to be done. My second observation in terms of data is when I look at the other questions related to security, to history, the past, NATO, questions about Kosovo. I'd say that a lot more work has to be done on reconciliation, on confronting the past, to have a better future. I can assure you, as the standing rapporteur for Serbia, I will certainly pay attention to issues of reconciliation also in my report in the European Parliament, which I'll draft later this fall. We have a unique opportunity to move when it comes to reconciliation through the restart of the dialogue between Belgrade and Pristina. I think this is an opportunity which should be taken up with full seriousness by the elites in the region. And it's also an opportunity to really look to the future. The Western Balkans, Serbia will have a successful, prosperous, stable, and European future only if it manages to reconcile some of its past mistakes. And this is an important message which I'd like to underline today when I look at this data. I think Serbia needs to look ahead when we talk about questions of security, when we talk about questions of alliances. We in Europe must cooperate more closely. And the European Union and NATO membership has brought in the past to all those countries that entered both the European Union and NATO more security, more prosperity, and more strength, more international influence. And this is the lesson I can certainly underline from the Slovak experience, but it's a lesson we see from across the region in East Central Europe. So I think the Southeastern Europe should continue in the same path, along the same way, and there is a lot more work that needs to be done in public communication in terms of how the West Balkans, and this is not just a message to Serbia, it's this message to the whole region, confronts the past. The conflicts of the past shouldn't guide the future action. This is something we learned in Central Europe. We in Slovakia have always had complicated relations with Hungary. We had uneasy relations settling our dissolution of the state with the Czechs, the Czechoslovakia. We have bigger neighbors. We are small kids in the middle of Europe. Poland is a lot bigger. Hungary is bigger. The Czech Republic is bigger. Austria is bigger and richer. Ukraine is our biggest neighbor. So we are kind of stuck in this region, and we've learned the best way to confront a successful future is to really look together how we can best cooperate with our neighbors and settle also some of the most divisive issues from our past. And I think we've been able to do this to a good extent. It's a continuous effort. And this is something which I'd say is a good lesson, perhaps, which could be taken up also in the Western Balkans. So this would be my two observations on the data as we look ahead in terms of what's coming up in Serbia's negotiation with the European Union, but also Serbia's domestic transformation. In terms of the public and the reforms. So we can engage seriously on really accelerating the negotiations on the European Union membership and also on our security cooperation. Now, my last remark will be on Montenegro, and I think this is only natural that I'll say that any precondition for good European future of Serbia is good neighbor relations with everybody, every neighbor in the region, and that includes also Montenegro. I know it's not easy because of a number of issues from the past, but I think the only way ahead is dialogue, dialogue, and dialogue. And that also includes a future resolution to the question of the application of the law on the religious freedoms in Montenegro. I think the only way to resolve this issue is through dialogue between the government in Montenegro and the church representatives. And we in the European Union are ready to help with this. There are a number of European institutions, international institutions watching this process very closely. And I think just as we have resolved a number of thorny, difficult issues from the past in Central Europe, which saw, centuries of war, and we are now able to work together in the European Union, I think the same goes for the Western Balkans. But there has to be a genuine interest in resolving these issues, in finding compromise, in giving up something. This cannot be a win-win game in terms of, I win everything and they lose everything. This has to be about a game whereby everybody gains something, while everybody is also willing to give up something. It's not an easy game to play, but this is the game of European politics, which we've learned to play in the European Union. So this would be my comment on this. And again, I'm in touch very closely also with our partners in Podgorica as the chair of the delegation for Montenegro. I'm crossing my fingers that Montenegro can have free and fair elections at the end of August. And of course, we'll be watching the situation there very closely as well. But let me just maybe say one sentence here on Montenegro. I think it's been very good news, and we welcome this more broadly, that Montenegro joined the North Atlantic Treaty Organization a few years ago. Montenegro's membership in NATO has been an important anchor of Montenegro's place in the political West and in the stability of the Western Balkans. So I would like to encourage also an open and honest debate on NATO, on relations with NATO in Serbia. I know this is difficult because of the recent past, but I think this is all part of a bigger efforts at reconciliation, which I've underlined. So thanks for those questions. It's been a longer entry, but I think those questions deserve a bit of an explanation also from my side, and I'm happy to take more. Thanks.
Gospodine Bilčik, sa mnom su danas ovde I moji kolege.
With me today are the colleagues that will assist me tomorrow to moderate this hybrid event. This is not just Zoom, because we also have the live coverage on YouTube, and Mr. Starovic, who is the historian and political expert, and John Capello, who is director of Balkan Security Network, a think tank recently established in Serbia. I have questions for you. We have about 15 minutes of your time. If it's okay with you, Mr. Starovic would like to ask you a question. Well, I will be very brief. You allow me just to have a brief comment on Mr. Klačar's public opinion survey, bearing in mind stable level of support of Serbian citizens in NATO, about 10%, and rather stable support of membership in EU at about 50%. There's a joke going that if NATO were to break and then form again with the same structure, same mission, same activities, but with different name, that the level of support for NATO would dramatically grow. Bearing in mind that our citizens do not observe NATO as the collective of the various member states with the traditional partners like Slovakia, Romania, or Hungary, or Spain. They do not even observe it through the prism of United States, because the rating of United States and the support, the promotion of cooperation in Washington is way higher than support for membership in NATO. NATO is always observed as an entity that is completely separate from all its members. I would like to thank Jelena for allowing me to moderate a panel that is going to present another survey that is prepared recently, that is the monitoring of the media coverage of radio and television stations and internet portals. We covered the topics that were dominating in the past, generally public health, but also political and economical issues, and relations between our country with the prominent international actors. Now, what is expected concerning the coverage of important international stakeholders, Russia, EU, China, United States? The tone that was measured, positive, neutral, and negative tone, the overwhelming number of them were negative in tone. However, if we put that aside, we see that there is a much higher number of those positive coverage concerning EU and United States in comparison with those who are negative. Now, what is rather surprising in our findings is that the majority of those who reported positively on the EU and United States are pro-government mainstream media, so television stations and dailies, while the so-called independent media, whether we're talking about Radio Free Europe, Voice of America, or some media franchises that are proponents of so-called opposition agenda in Serbia, was much less contributing. So my question to Mr. Bilčik was to comment such findings, and we will certainly have an opportunity to speak more about these findings tomorrow in the panel that I'm going to be moderating.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if I should comment on the media reporting, or if you wanted me to comment more generally on the attitudes towards NATO. That wasn't quite clear from a question. Could you maybe specify, please?
Of course, if you would like, you can always say a couple of words about the first results that I spoke about, whether it's surprising for you that media reporting on relations with EU and America were more positive rather than negative. So most of the coverage was in positive tone.
Look, I think, and this is a broader point, and again, it relates to the media scene. I think it's important that the media always reports based on facts. We need facts in public debate. We need facts in the media. This is something which I've always fought for as a citizen, and I always fight for in politics. By the way, I just became in the European Parliament. We have a new special committee on fighting disinformation, which will start its work in September. I'm one of the members representing my political group, the European People's Party, the EPP. I take the situation in the media across Europe very, very seriously at the moment, because we see, even as a consequence of the COVID-19 situation, that the independence and the freedom of media and the ability and the focus of the media to report facts are under increasing pressure. You know, quite frankly, I think given what the European Union, what the West in general has been doing in the Western Balkans, also how much we have supported the developments in Serbia in the past years, I'm not at all surprised that the reporting in the media is generally more positive, because I think it's very clear, and I've said this over and over, that even though we are in this crisis situation, COVID-19 is a crisis situation for all of us, because we are starting to see the social and economic consequences of the recent months, and of course we are starting to learn to live in a new normal with the COVID-19, which is not always easy, but we have to get used to it. Here it's very important that we stay very, very true to the facts. So in that sense, you know, I think we need the facts about the European politics, about the EU's engagement, and about the EU's role. I generally believe that what the European Union has been doing in the Western Balkans, and especially in Serbia, has been good news for the country and for the people in the country, delivering consistently the high sum of financial assistance, the strongest investment. When you look at where the investments are coming from across the world, so foreign investment to Serbia, it is the EU member states, and political support. I agree we could do more. I agree we could be more visible. We could be more engaged and more active. But I think what we have been able to do already gives a good sense to the people why European Union membership is a good thing. So I'm not surprised, but I'm surprised that actually we have this question and this debate. I'd expect that the media defend the public interest. And by the way, this is a bit of a thing which I've noticed across the Western Balkans, the sense that there is the opposition media, the pro-government media. You know, I live in a country where we have mostly independent media serving the public interest. And I think this is something which we should all work towards, have a stronger media scene which defends the public interest, represents the public interest, and whereby people don't question that, you know, who is this media reporting for, on whose behalf. I think this is also an important part of our work, our engagement, in terms of the enlargement agenda, to make sure that the media scene is strong, it's free, and it's independent, and we shouldn't have this sort of debate questioning, you know, the reporting by the media, because facts are facts, and we should have the facts straight. Now that means we should also have we should also have the full right to express our opinion, and our opinion may vary. You know, our opinion may be, I don't like the European Union, I like the European Union, I don't like NATO, I don't like NATO, but our opinion should always be well informed based on the facts, and we need clarity on the facts. And here I'd say that it should be no surprise that the facts about the EU and Europe are positive. But I'd say we have a lot more work to be done here in terms of the media scene, but also in terms of the political landscape. I've often noticed, and maybe this is my last point as a wider reaction, in the Western Balkans, in Serbia, that Europe, European Union, European actions oftentimes questioned by politicians all across the political spectrum. And I'd expect that in a country which is keen to join the European Union, which is genuinely interested in doing so, that the fight is mostly about how that can be best achieved, rather than the fight is with the European politicians who are here to really trying to help attain that goal. And that is a more general remark in terms of how I view the public debate in the country on the European Union membership. I'd expect, and this would certainly be my expectation, especially after the elections in Serbia, which weren't easy, but which produced a result. And the result is clear in that sense. There is a very clear majority in the country, governed by a strong political force that's always said our priority is European Union membership. So I'd expect that we see some delivery on those words now, some real action, and that action should be also clear from the way European Union is talked about by the political elite and is reported in the media across the country, because this should be a societal project. You know, joining the European Union is not a choice you make because you feel like it today or tomorrow. It's a bit like marriage. And it's a marriage which is difficult and very costly to leave, as we see with Brexit and the United Kingdom leaving the European Union. So it is a choice for life, in a sense. And in that sense, it should be treated as such in terms of it being a strategic goal. So I'd hope that actually, in my last sentence is, we see even more positive news on what Europe is doing, because we are in this together with Serbia.
Ja se slažem s vašom ocenom o značaju ne dešavaju u vakumu, već u određenom vremenskom periodu koji
I absolutely agree with you. All the activities currently taking place are not taking place in vacuum, but in certain political and economic environment. I think that the rhetorics of those in the media always depend on the current topical events. In the SERRIA'S report, Dark Side of the Moon actually shows that this strong trend in support of cooperation with the United States and more space that pro-government media are giving to pro-NATO, pro-American commentators and pundits is actually very much aligned with this general trend of coverage of those who are very much in favor of the international cooperation, whether it be Deutsche Welle, Radio Free Europe, and Voice of America. There's this absurd that exists in Serbia, and one of the things that is not so evident in the political West. This is one of the reasons why we entitled this conference, This Is Us, attempting to explain all these phenomena to those who are creating public policies and public opinion in the West, because we believe that this is an element that is missing or is not currently covered completely. No one is actually to blame for it, but I do believe that maybe morning television programs and the daily coverage should be observed more closely in order to see this trend. personally, as someone who's a proponent of NATO and United States cooperation, I've never asked for an interview by Deutsche Welle or Radio Free Europe or Voice of America for the past several years. So, however, I'm regularly invited by pro-government media. So there is obviously some kind of a switch that took place that we do not know reasons for. I think that Mr. Capello has a question for you, so I don't want to abuse my time further.
Thank you, Jelena. And of course, thank you to the Center for Euro-Atlantic Studies for having me again this year. Happy to be here. Actually, Mr. Blitchik, you covered my question, and Jelena, you're following up. I wanted to delve a little bit more into what lessons we might share in dealing with public opinion. You talked about it being like a marriage, and I think that partnership is something that I hope we have a chance to discuss further, tomorrow, because I think that's key to this. We could talk about messaging, narratives, about messages and how we shape those, but at the end of the day, it's really the actions and that partnership that that resonates with the public, and I'd like to hear a little bit about how the European Union, from the European perspective, what lessons you could share with improving that partnership, with developing and building and showing that it is in fact something that's beyond sometimes what we see as propaganda for NATO, propaganda for the EU, but it's real. And I think this COVID situation shows that it's real and it has effect on people's daily lives. So showing that partnership, I think that resonates as a message. And I'd like to hear a little bit about how we do that as Europeans and as Americans.
Thank you very much. This is the key question, and I think it's about our daily bread and butter when it comes to European politics, in a sense, and we need to be able to multiply that across the societies in the Western Balkans, but also across the societies in the European Union and also within the NATO member states. I know we're discussing I have my EU head on, naturally, as the member of the European Parliament, as the rapporteur for Serbia, but I'm also convinced that Europe's security has been well guarded by NATO. I was in favor of NATO membership of my own country, and I think it served us very well. But I also know it's a two-way street. It's not about the fact that you enter an organization and you kind of put out your hand and you expect that things will be delivered to you, money will be delivered to you, investment will come to you. It's also about what you do. It's about the contribution. It's not a zero-sum game. It's a win-win in a genuine sense. That is to say, just imagine, and I always tell this to people, imagine what Europe would look like had European Union and NATO enlargement not taken place. Starting in the 1990s, we had the first NATO expansion back in the 1990s, with the first countries joining over 20 years ago, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization from the former communist bloc. And this was a real game changer. And if you imagine Europe today being as divided as it was more than 20 years ago, how it would cope with the COVID-19 situation, but also with the financial and debt crisis we faced more recently, with the migration crisis, which, arguably we haven't managed as well as we could have, but we still managed to survive it as NATO, as the European Union. And we are trying to move ahead and look ahead in terms of how we can have more sustainable ways of dealing with migration issues. And we've just become a lot stronger as the Union, as NATO, and we are able to face challenges together, which are much larger than our individual countries and societies. I think especially for small countries, it's a lot easier and in many respects, it gives us a lot more power. And, you know, Serbia is a big country in the Western Balkans, but in the European sense, it is a smaller country. I think we all recognize that. And I can say that coming from a country which is just that smaller than Serbia in population, it's given us a lot more power to deal with bigger countries like Russia. You know, it's very different coming to Moscow and meeting the Russian president if you're a leader of a country which is a member state of NATO and of the European Union, as opposed to coming as a leader of a country which doesn't have the backing of these organizations and the partners in these organizations. The same goes for dealing with China. So it suddenly gives you a sense of having a base, which gives you a sense of power, which is not otherwise there in international relations. And given where we are today, the uncertainty we face, this is not a simple either bipolar world or a world which emerged shortly after the end of the Cold War. We have a very, very difficult world. And of course, we also have a lot of problems in the West, across the West, arguably. But the only way to deal with them is to go on together as NATO and as the EU, and tell our story in a genuine way to all of those who might be and are keen to work with us or to join us. Because I think it's worked well for us. And arguably every single NATO and EU expansion since decades ago has been a success story. So let's talk a bit more about these success stories, even in Serbia, across the Western Balkans. And let's give people hope. But there is the flip side of the coin here. And this is where, you know, I also want to give my appeal to my friends in Serbia, in Montenegro, in other parts of the Western Balkans. NATO membership, EU membership is not a simple political transaction or calculation. It is a bit like marriage. It is a much bigger commitment. It is about a strategic choice. It is about answering the question, where do I want to see my country? How do I want to see my country work? What sorts of institutions do I want to see in that country? It's not about beating the political opponent here and now or winning this next election. It's about making a choice which will basically determine the future of the young generation today and the future of the generations which are to come. And this is the story we see across East Central Europe. It's not always an easy story, but I'd say it's a better story than staying outside. I already mentioned I'm from a country, our biggest neighbor is Ukraine, which is neither in NATO nor in the European Union, and which is in a state of war, effectively speaking, with its even bigger neighbor, Russia. When it comes to the Eastern Ukraine, or when it comes to Crimea, which has been annexed by Russia. So I want to say that it's also about taking up the choice, the civilizational choice, seriously. And that entails hard work, commitment to reform, and delivery of action on the ground across the Western Balkans, which we are keen to see. I know, and I realize this, the past decade was a bit of a lost decade when it comes to our attention, political attention, and also our clear commitment to the region. And I know that people are hesitant to trust the West, to trust NATO, and to trust the European Union. And I understand some of the reasons why. But I think we've done a lot of work, especially the past year, to show that we are serious about European Union enlargement. NATO doors are also open. The best proof is the accession of North Macedonia just a few months ago. And hard work does pay off. Resolution of conflicts does pay off. This is the story of North Macedonia, for instance. I think this is also something which we need to underline our public communication. It's not just about what we can give to the region, what we can give to Serbia. It's also about what Serbia can give to Europe. and what Serbia can give to Serbian citizens in terms of the European future. And it's about the qualitative change on the ground, which we are keen to help with, but we're also keen to see. And this is the story I think we need to tell in a very honest way, perhaps use language which is less bureaucratic, which is more political, which is more direct. We need to learn to do that. But I don't think we have another choice. I'd say this is the last decade in terms of the tectonic forces which we face in Europe, when we can still succeed in terms of the European future of the Western Balkans and the Western future of the Western Balkans when it comes to the wider security architecture. So we should take it very, very seriously. And the more support we get, the better. I'm also glad to see that this is a joint efforts of the Serbian NGO, the European institutions, and the Americans. I think we need to be on board, all of us. We are in this boat all together. And the more we can cooperate across the Atlantic, the better we can be in terms of making change happen also in the Western Balkans. So this would be also my maybe last reaction to this wonderful exchange. It's been a real pleasure. And I also wish you a very, very good and constructive, frank and open debate. It's important that we all have it and you all have it in Belgrade. And I look forward to being there on the ground at some point whenever this COVID-19 pandemic is finally under control.
Thank you, Mr. Bilčik, for taking participation. Thank you for accepting to participate in this conference at such short notice. I hope that we'll be able to continue cooperation very soon. Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night.
Ovim se završava prvi panel svečani.
Dear all, we would like to finalize our first panel and first official opening of the NATO week entitled This Is Us, and tomorrow we'll continuing at 9:30. Once again, I would like to thank the Tanya News Agency that not only enabled us to use this wonderful image as our visual identity, but is also covering live our event and will be covering it tomorrow as well. So you'll be able to watch it on YouTube channel, both in Serbian and in English. Thank you very much to all my colleagues. I hope you will help me tomorrow as well. Due to the special precautionary measures, we cannot use the air conditioning. At one point in time, there were planes circling us that spraying against mosquitoes, and I know this is not easy. So once again, thank you very much. See you tomorrow.
Okay.